Hi, well, good evening. It is 6 o'clock. Welcome to the Cheltenham Borough Council Planning Committee being held on Thursday, the 16th of November, 2023. My name is Councillor Paul Baker. I'm the chairman of the committee. The meeting is being streamed live to Cheltenham Borough Council's YouTube channel, and the recording of the meeting will be held for 4 years. If there are any breaks in transmission to the YouTube stream, the meeting will be adjourned for a short period until any issues are resolved. If you are here to make a representation to the meeting, you are consenting to the use of the sound and video recordings for broadcasting and training purposes. Please be aware that the CCTV and audio recording is now in operation in the public gallery. The recordings will be held by the Council for 5 months. Please note a fire alarm test is not expected, so if the alarm does sound, you should immediately make your way to the nearest exit. Okay. Just in case you weren't aware, agenda item 87 to 89 Beaches Road has been withdrawn. So onto the agenda, apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Clark. I think that's the only one missing today. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Any members? Declarations of interest? Nope. Okay, lovely. Thank you. Declarations of independent site visits. Any member wish to declare? Councillor Andrews?
Yeah, I've visited both.
I didn't hear you, sorry.
I've visited both, yeah.
I suspect that's the case for many of us. We all know the sites, they're all local, so I won't go through all that. Thank you. Item 4 then is minutes of the last meeting. Are members happy that they're a true and accurate record and happy if we to sign those off? Yeah, thank you, Councillor Barnes. Just do that. Okay, agenda item 5, public questions. There are none. Which brings us on to agenda item 6A, which is 129 to 133 The Promenade, and I'll ask the case officer Lucy White to introduce this application. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you, Chairman. This application seeks the retention of and alterations to reduced number of marquees at 125, 127, 129, 131 and 133 Promenade for an additional 12-month period, and the application is a revision to a planning application determined in 2022 for a slightly larger number of marquees that was refused by the Council and dismissed at appeal. The application is before Planning Committee at the request of Councillors Wilkinson, Baker and Andrews. I think most members are familiar with the site, obviously. Imperial Gardens opposite, Cheltenham Ladies College campus to the rear, and Queen's Hotel and Montpellier Street further south. This is the proposed layout, and it's what can be seen more or less on site today, although there are some tent structures at the rear of 133. So it's 11 larger marquees and 6 additional smaller structures. So that is the proposed layout. Elevation drawings, the top row is the previous situation on site, and that was the appeal scheme, and the one that was refused in 2020 with the larger number of marquees. So the 3 marquees to the side of 133 are included in that elevation drawing. The middle drawing is what you see on site now, and the bottom elevation drawing is what is proposed, with the reduction in height, with the removal of these central peaks and the domed altered roof form of the retained marquees. So I thought it might be useful just to sort of run through some photographs of the site. Although we are all familiar with them, I just thought it might be helpful just to remind everyone. So this is the previous photograph outside 133, so it does include those marquees that were at the side. And to the front of 129, 131. and to the front of 125 and 127. And a view looking up the street. Another one, a bit closer. And this is a photograph taken in June 2019, obviously before the marquees were erected, and that shows the previous jumbarellas that were outside 131, but obviously nothing within the front curtilages of the other listed buildings. And this was taken in 2015, and this was before 133 became established as part of the 131 hotel complex, with the smaller parasols that were originally on site and provided the external dining facilities at that time. And going even further back to 2012. And this is a view of 2019 of 133. So the key planning matters to consider today are the impact on heritage assets. So there are 5 Grade 2 star listed buildings, the neighbouring listed buildings and the conservation area. The alterations to the design, form and appearance and the number of marquees, the 12-month temporary period, the economic and social benefits and impact on the vitality and economy of the town centre, any impacts on neighbour amenity and trees, and the appeal decision, which is a material consideration of this current application. So just running through those in summary. As members are aware, the application site includes the 5 Grade 2 star listed buildings, and these are located prominently within the conservation area. These buildings collectively form an important group of large detached and semi-detached Regency villas and are of considerable aesthetic and historic importance. Harm to the significance of the designated heritage assets, that being the listed buildings and the conservation area, has been identified, and both the Council's Conservation Officer and Historic England raised significant concerns over the proposals, despite the reduction in number of marquees and the proposed physical alterations to the marquees. The design, general appearance, and the scale, footprint, and number of marquees continue to cause significant concern. The marquees and ancillary structures cover the majority of the front curtilages of each of these buildings. This is harmful to the setting and character of the listed buildings and impacts on important views and vistas within the conservation area. Despite the proposed approximate 2-metre reduction in height by removing and replacing the central peak elements with a dome-shaped roof, the marquees would otherwise appear the same and continue to obscure parts of the front elevations of these buildings, and thereby the appreciation and setting of the listed buildings. The recent appeal decision, which is appended to the officer report, and hopefully you'll have had a chance to read through that, is a material consideration in the determination of this application. Although there are differences between the appeal scheme and what is being considered today, the current proposals fail to address all of the concerns raised by the appeal inspector and the reasons for the appeal being dismissed. The identified harm is considered to be less than substantial and will therefore need to be weighed against the public benefits of the proposals as required by the NPPF. The public benefits of the proposals have been considered very carefully alongside the applicant's justification for the marquee's continued retention. However, there are considered to be limited public benefits associated with retaining the marquees for a further 12 months, and in any event, these benefits are likely to have existed prior to the erection of the marquees. The limited social and economic benefits of the proposals are not therefore considered to outweigh the identified harm to the significance of designated heritage assets, bearing in mind that the NPPF requires great weight to be attached to the assets of conservation, irrespective of whether that harm amounts to less than substantial harm. The applicant has recently submitted a pre-application scheme for consideration. The scheme proposes the replacement of the marquees with permanent structures within the front curtilages of each of the 5 listed buildings. However, pre-application discussions are still at a very early stage, and as such, officers are unable to provide any certainty at this point in time that these proposals will be supported or considered acceptable in principle. The recommendation is for members, therefore, to resolve to refuse the application for the following reasons. the proposed retention reduction of a reduced number of marquees and in their altered form harm the setting of the listed buildings. Their form, design, scale and prominence neither sustain or enhance the significance of designated heritage assets. The identified less than substantial harm to heritage assets is not outweighed by the limited public benefits of the proposals, and the supporting information demonstrates a poor understanding of the affected heritage assets and offers no clear or convincing justification for the proposed works in heritage terms. So the decision will be issued pending the outcome of the applicant having served the Certificate B notice and having considered any additional representations made by relevant third parties following the serving of that notice. If there are any further representations made in the interim period, it's suggested that we go back to Chair and Vice with that information, and then a discussion could be had whether, depending on the content of those representations, it needs to come back to Planning Committee for further consideration. But otherwise, the decision would be issued after the 21-day period expires. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Right, we have one speaker. I'd like to ask Simon Firkin to come and speak for up to 3 minutes in support of the application.
Chair, just quickly, Councillor Andrews has just left. If he, yeah, okay.
Good point. So we'll hold on, Simon. Okay, Simon, when you're ready. Thank you.
Good evening. The note sent yesterday corrected a subtle but important point. If, by mistake, officers believed the inspector decided something he could not have done, this in turn may have affected the advice. The contradiction in the report where it says the marquees increase the number of covers, but then says the covers are the same now as the appeal scheme for more marquees can't be correct. And this was the applicant's concern. Hopefully, having clarified that, this case rests on the degree of harm you consider the marquees, in their reduced form, have on heritage assets, and whether the benefits of keeping them in that less harmful form for 12 months outweighs the harm. It's a completely subjective judgment for you as decision maker. It's not dissimilar to the pump rooms. The retention of the temporary structure was refused by committee. The applicant reapplied for the same structure in the same place with a clear glazed roof. Officers again recommended refusal, and you granted permission, decided there was no need for the roof to be changed. We have reduced the number of marquees. The roof is significantly different, being 2 metres lower, that's about 40%, to reveal much more of the buildings. And the side of 133 looking up Montpellier is open. Hospitality continues to face unprecedented pressure. National News recently reported that 383 pubs closed in the first half of this year. That's more than 2 a day. In Q1 this year, 569 restaurants entered insolvency. That's more than 5.5 a day. As a society, our social habits and spending patterns have changed and continue to change. Who would have thought 20 years ago we'd have so many coffee shops? The hospitality sector, though, remains important, especially for those continuing to use it for the economy and the cultural offer and vitality of the town. For any owner and applicant wishing to invest in this hugely challenging environment, we hope authorities, members included, will make pragmatic and helpful decisions, particularly here, where carefully considered plans for further investment in an appropriate solution are now with planners for pre-app. The marquees are not acceptable long term. They cause less than substantial harm, but the harm is now greatly reduced. The fabric of the building is unaffected, it is all completely reversible, and is for just 12 months. The much reduced harm is now outweighed by the benefits. Cheltenham's fine culture of independent hospitality helps make the town what it is. This is a judgment decision. As you've done elsewhere recently, you're fully within your rights to come to a different view to officers. At a time when support for this industry and the benefits it provides is needed more than ever, I ask you to please allow this and grant permission for 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we now move to member questions. Excuse me, my alarm's gone off by 3 minutes. Okay, Councillor Fisher.
Question for the legal gentleman. The marquees were originally put up under the legislation for COVID. The legislation for COVID, as far as I am aware, no longer exists. Is this true?
Through you, Chair, thank you. The report does state that, and it addresses that. I remind members that you're to consider the application before you that's been made today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Seacombe, thank you.
Has the Certificate B issue been resolved?
The applicant has provided the amended application form with Certificate B filled in, and they have served notice, the Certificate B notice. That was this week. So it's in play. So the 21 days has started. But it's not resolved. We have to wait for 21 days to expire and wait for any representations to come forward.
Any other member of the question? Nope. Okay, I will go into debate. Anybody who would like to speak? Councillor Oliver.
Right, thanks, Chair. This decision is a balance between the less than substantial harm to the heritage asset and the social and economic benefits to the town. Buildings like these are expensive to maintain. They are heritage assets, but they're expensive to maintain in good condition. That means that businesses that have them have to be economically viable to enable them to continue investing in the maintenance. There's no point having a heritage asset that's empty and crumbling. The site's really popular, and it plays a key role in linking footfall between Montpellier and the promenade. One of the main reasons for the popularity, I think, is that since the pandemic, people have found out that they can eat outside and enjoy doing so in a sheltered environment. I understand the heritage arguments, but I believe it's far better that these buildings help to create a vibrant and lively atmosphere in our town than stand silent and aloof as crumbling museum pieces. The proposals for a 12 months extension in order to come up with a proper long-term solution, they've tried to mitigate the effect of the tents, marquees, and I think we should grant that. And so I won't be supporting the refusal.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler.
Sorry, I'm afraid I'm in support of officers. The proposal for the lower ones, yes, does show more of the frontage of the buildings, but I see it more as I think officers refer to it as the front curtilage, the front gardens of those buildings, which I think is very important. It's part of the whole, as it were. I think without any gazebos or whatever, there is some very nice frontage that could be well used. I can understand that the applicant is looking to be able to increase their shop space, so to speak, to have more customers in, but this is a very significant site. I know Simon Firkins made reference to the pump rooms. The pump rooms, in my view, is very different insofar that, in my view, this is a rather ugly side of the building, particularly almost round by the bin sheds, whereas this application is right bang in front. If the pump rooms wanted to put their additional buildings right in the front of the colonnade there, I think I would have voted against that. So I think I'm with officers that I don't see a way forward with having any structures. The likes of parasols for summertime, or even, I guess, though this is not what's on, if we were talking about a gazebo through winter time to allow people to eat outside, I could be into that, but I don't feel that what's on offer here is going to make a grade 2 star listed building look any better. So sorry, I'm afraid I'm with the officers.
I don't think you have to be sorry. That's not, you're entitled to your view. Councillor Fisher, then Councillor Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I will support the officers for many reasons. I don't think planning should consider the viability of somebody's business as a planning criteria. If you choose to sell whatever you like in the high street, as long as it's legal and you apply for a permission to open the shop, we don't look at your business plan. And I'm sure I won't be looking at Green Onion's business plan or anybody else's business plan. That's their decision, and they make an educated decision on whether they can make it viable. And they did, without marquees. They made that decision, and they did a very nice job on rejuvenating the buildings. They weren't crumbling edifices, as some people have said, and they won't be crumbling edifices because you're not allowed to let a grade 2 building become a crumbling edifice under planning laws. So please don't play that one. There was some very good topiary in the front grounds, and the parasols, I would check with legal. You don't need permission for a parasol you take down every night, I don't think. No, I'm getting a shake of the head from the officer, so I'll accept that I am right there. If we accept this, we have just had an appeal turned down by the inspectorate. We are, as I checked earlier this week, we are proceeding with the enforcement notice on that. It would be nice to see the front again, so is the application that is at pre-app stage, we could judge on an open site. And we would be not supporting our enforcement officer if we sort of say, oh, forget that, we're going to let them do it anyhow for 12 months. The viability of a business is not a planning consideration. Please don't say that. The footfall is not very difficult to measure, whether it is down to Dunkerton or to whatever, to the lights outside the Muni or whatever at Christmas, you know, that you cannot make a really hard judgment. So I will support the officers. I think it would be foolish not to, and it would be wrong with a enforcement being applied on the existing marquees. Let's get them down. Let's look at his full application if and when it comes.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. I too will be supporting the officer's refusal recommendation. And Councillor Wheeler said exactly right. It's a site. I was driving down here tonight looking at how lovely the lights look, and then suddenly I'm hit with that great big white tent. And although the new ones will be lower, they will still be a site, and not a good site, a bad site. And others have said this was a thriving business well before COVID, incredibly thriving, very successful, so successful they've been able to extend and extend again. And I think the subjectivity that the applicant has referred to, I think is very true, that Pump Room is a totally different decision, and as Councillor Wheeler said as well, had it been right in front of the Pump Room, it would have been very different. These are right in your face, and if we don't refuse this, it will be making an absolute mockery of the planning appeal system. The inspector has refused this on the basis that the marquees get in the way of the ground floor, and the new application in front of us tonight will be well in front of the ground floor. So they just have not addressed the rules, the reasons for the inspector's refusal. So I will be supporting the officers.
Thank you. Councillor McCloskey and then Councillor Seacombe.
Thank you, Chair. During COVID, I was Vice Chair of Licensing, and it was, along with Mike Redmond, it was our task to go and judge the tables and chairs on the pavement around the town. So I've got a very good insight into the viability of all of those other businesses. And the key point is that at the end of COVID, those tables and chairs, by and large, disappeared. Nobody will go hungry in Cheltenham because a few hundred covers, or whatever it might be, at 133 are no longer available. And nobody comes to Cheltenham specifically just to go and have a drink at 133. Simon mentioned pubs and restaurants are struggling. Well, the benefit to Cheltenham would be of a few dozen or 100 covers being spread out more evenly. So I just don't accept the social and economic benefit. The benefit to Dunkertons, yes, I understand entirely, but that is not a planning matter. So I am supporting the officers here. I loved the old photos that we got in the pack. I thought they gave us a far better impression of what we aren't seeing at the moment. So I will be supporting the officers.
Thank you. You'll have to bear with me. I've forgotten to bring my glasses this evening, and I've made some notes. So if I stumble, that's why. We've got, COVID caused an awful lot of establishments in the town to put up their tents, marquees, gazebos, or whatever it was. Everyone else in the town has complied with the regulation to bring them down, which should have been last September, October time. And this one establishment is resolutely cocking a snoop at the regulations and trying to muscle in on making it is, for those who actually quibbled with the amount, it's 150 covers outside in the marquees. That's an extra 150 covers. If it's full every night at, let us say, 40 or 50 pounds a head, that's some £7,500 if we're going to go into figures like that. The economic benefits, which were mentioned somewhere in the report, I thought economic benefits in a recession and cost of living crisis, the only person who benefits from this is the owner, and we know who that is. There has also been said that there's plenty of time, they were going to make a plan for a year's time. They've had that time to plan for the future. And next page. And so, sorry, yes. If loss of 1 or 2 tents is nothing. It's either the whole lot or leave them all up. And of course, as you can tell from the way I'm talking, I want them all down. And the other thing that has not been mentioned tonight in this chamber is that there are heaters which are heating the internal heaters, which are not terribly eco-friendly. And so I think, and I'll echo Councillor Fisher's comment that successful trading is not a public benefit, it is just for the owner. So I'm afraid I'm going to side with the officers on this particular issue.
Can you just turn your mic?
I beg your pardon. It's my eyes I'm worried about.
Councillor Bamford.
Thank you, Chair. I was originally hoping for a scaled down version of the tents as they are now, in such a form that I could have supported temporary provision until such time as a more long-term solution could be found. Although I'm very sceptical as to whether that actually exists, but let's just say it could. But it wasn't really until I saw the photographs of what it was like that I realised actually what we were missing and what a really major impact we've been suffering. And I don't actually think this scheme would reduce that impact very much. So I should be voting with the officers.
Just from my perspective, I think the most compelling image was, as you mentioned, the 2019 images, which we've probably forgotten because those tents have been up for such a long time. But just how impressive that terrace is. And it's not just the buildings, it's the setting of those buildings, which has been alluded to. You know, even with these lower tents, you're going to lose the whole ambiance and all of the setting, the railings and the open area. So I'm absolutely going to support the recommendation. The applicant still has 3 months where he can have temporary use of marquees, and perhaps inclement weathers. That's a separate issue. So I think I'm going to go straight to the vote. And those in favour, please show. In favour of permit. Sorry, in favour of refuse. Get this right. Okay, so that is unanimous. Oh, sorry, abstentions? Against? Thank you. Sorry, Tim. Okay, so we now go on to item 6B, which is the car park at Synagogue Lane, and I'll ask Lucy to introduce the item. Thank you.
Chair. Thank you, Chair. So this application is seeking the retention of the temporary public pay and display car park at Synagogue Lane, Chart Walk, for an additional period of 3 years. The application is before Planning Committee because the applicant and landowner is Cheltenham Borough Council. I think people are familiar where it is, but obviously it's near the Jessup Avenue office quarter and the Royal Crescent, and the River Chelt and Chelt Walk run down towards the south. And the vehicle access is via St James's Square, and there's a pedestrian route onto St George's Place. The current layout of the car park hasn't changed since it was first laid out in 2015. It has a temporary surface at the moment with a mesh and gravel infill, which seems to be holding up reasonably well. Some further images of the site, looking in and looking down towards the exit. So the key planning matters are the consideration of the reasons put forward by the applicant for extending the use of the land as a temporary car park for a further 3 years, policy EM1 of the Cheltenham Plan, and any impact on highway safety and neighbour amenity. The setting of neighbouring listed buildings and character of the conservation area, the impacts on those matters were considered as part of the original 2015 application, have not been reconsidered at this point. So as members will be aware, the Synagogue Lane section of Chelt Walk car park has been in use as a car park since 2015, although parts of it were already in use at that time and formed part of the larger Chelt Walk car park. The Cheltenham Plan identifies the application site and the adjoining Cheltwalk car park as a location for new employment development under policy EM1. Therefore, the proposed further extended period of use of the land as a car park has had to be considered carefully. And to summarise, since 2020, there has been little interest in the site in terms of it coming forward for redevelopment. The post-pandemic office market has not fully recovered, and there is a surplus of office space currently available within the market. The future of this site will be reassessed as part of the ongoing work associated with the joint local plan preparation. But in the meantime, the car park is meeting the parking demands of the Jessup Avenue office quarter and helps reduce parking pressure generally within this part of the town centre. It should also be pointed out that extending the temporary use of the land won't sterilise the site's future development for commercial purposes, and that's an important point to raise. The recommendation is therefore to grant planning permission for a further 3 years, subject to the following conditions, and that will be the time. So the decision issue date is likely to be the 18th, so it's November 26th. The approved plans drawing no new structures to be built on the land or raising of land levels, and the submission of a flood evacuation plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Any questions, members? Anyone for debate? Thank you, Councillor Fisher, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's disappointing that we another 3 years extension, in my mind. We talked earlier this evening about 5-year land supply. A mixed development on there would be excellent, and we would have some control because we are the landowners, which is what I said 3/4 of an hour ago. We've got to take opportunities to control the 5-year land supply and of land we own. We could do that. I realise the demand for office space is down, but there is office space being built in and around Cheltenham and other towns in the county. But we need some good quality housing. And that would be a very good site with all the right vibes as regards accessibility to the town, lack of having to use motor vehicles, you know. We should be exploring that avenue. We're certainly probably going to explore it with the building we're sat in tonight. This is going to be offices. I'd probably write you a guarantee on that. It will be accommodation. A percentage of it, if not all of it. So it's just a comment that it's a shame, really, we should be developing it, not using it as a static car park.
Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. I think, building on what my learned colleague on the other side said, I mean, the short term is 3 years car park. Great, because we need car parks now in this part of town. We know that. During that 3 years, we will be working on the joint strategic plan. We will therefore look at this site as a medium-term development where we should be putting affordable homes, maybe some flats, whatever. So in a measured way, meanwhile, in the short term, we're using it as a car park where it's needed. Longer term, we take it into the five-year housing supply. This is 3-year car park. So we're going to bring it in to the tail end of that 5-year housing supply as part of the land for houses. So I think we should carry on, give it 3 years, but then looking at bringing it into the long-term plan for development.
Any other member? Okay, we'll go to the vote then. Those in favour of the recommendation to permit, please show. I think that is unanimous. Lovely, thank you all. The next item then is appeals, which is just to note the reports. There are no other items of urgency. Next scheduled meeting is the 14th of December. Thank you.